Hi again. So today's sequence is going to be on our hip flexors. So if you tuned in for the last one, when we were looking at the quadricep muscles, we were constantly trying to eliminate our hip flexors from the strength and stretching that we were doing. So today we're going to concentrate on the hip flexors. So if you don't know where they are or what they are, it's the common name or term that we use for the psoas muscle. And the psoas muscle is the big connector between your upper and lower body. So if you ever thought, like, how is my upper body connected to my lower body? One of the main ways that we are connected is through the psoas muscles. And they connect to your spine and move internally through your body, and they come down along here, and they come down into that little groove in your pelvis, and they attach to the top of your femurs, your big thigh bones. So really, really important. Big, thick band of muscle. And as I say, we've one at either side. And if they're tight at all or weak, then they're going to pull your body forward. And that's so bad for us, because that means lots of lower back issues. It means hamstring issues, and then maybe coming down even into the calf muscle, even to the feet. So major muscle and connectors in the body. So it's something to be really, really, pay attention to as we mobilize through the whole body. So the purpose of all of these little videos that I'm doing are just to show you how to take care of individual parts of your body and then how to connect them all. So when we get to the end of our sequence of moves and caring videos that we're doing, I'm going to put it all together into one, say maybe 45, 50-minute sequence where we can just do something that's kind of a daily routine of just keeping your body in good shape as you go through your life. Okay, so today then, we're working on hip flexors. So let's just call them hip flexors. What are they responsible for? So I can just show you very quickly and very briefly. I've yoga blocks, but you can equally use, I have a big thick book here. Most of you should have books in your house of some kind or other, or anything that resembles something like that. So you're just going to sit on your mat or carpet or whatever you're sitting on, and you're just going to lift your foot up and take it across. That's hip flexor. That's your hip flexor doing that work. Now the quad is playing a part, but not a huge part. Now you don't want to lean back as you do that, because that's cheating, okay? You want to sit up nice and straight, and you just want to lift your foot over and then lift it back. And then if you want to take that and make it a little bit harder, then you can do that. And you can just make your hip flexor stronger, and you can feel it working. And then if you want to make it a little bit harder, remember, no cheating, no leaning back. You can lift it up and take it back. And this is pure hip flexor move. And you would do that on either side, just beginning with something really, really simple. Of course, you never neglect your other foot either. You do both. So you can begin at a really low level, or you can just begin by simply lifting it. And that's a strength move for the hip flexor on the right there. And then you would do the same on the left, just lifting it up and lifting it down. Very, very simple routine. And I'm going to show you how to build that into a combined routine that builds both strength and flexibility in your hip flexors. So remember again what their function is. They connect your upper and lower body, attaching to the spine, running internally, and attaching to the inside of your femurs, your big thigh bones. So I'm going to sit sideways so you can see what I'm doing. And remember, I'm always sitting up straight. I've always got my shoulders back and down, and I've always got my feet flexed back towards me. So I'm actually switched on as I do all of this. You're going to take your hands behind you. So you're opening through your shoulders. You're going to bend your left knee, and then you're going to lift and lower your right. That's pure hip flexor movement. Lift and lower. And you see, as I come up, I point my toe. And as I come down, I flex, because I'm always looking for exercises that are compound, that combine several movements. So I'm working on my ankles and my hip flexors at the same time. So I do it here. And if you're finding this quite difficult, and if you haven't been doing it before, you may very well, I would come down onto my elbows. That's much, much easier. And I want you to watch what's happening. Much bigger range of movement, number one, and also easier, much, much easier. So you're lifting and lowering and lifting and lowering. And then to make it really easy, then you are going to lie right back down and you're going to lift and lower and lift and lower. And then if you want to take it easier again, you're going to lie fully back down. So lying right back down, you're going to lift and lower and lift and lower. And you can see that you've got a full range of movement here. Nice long hamstrings. And then you're going to lower and lift and lower. And then to come all the way back, up onto your elbows, up onto your hands. And then let's come to the front. And now you can hold on to the front of your left shin. And you're going to lift and lower and lift and lower. And this is actually more difficult than the other ones that I've been doing. And lift and lower. I would do each leg, and I would do, depending on how much time you've got and also how difficult this is, I would begin with maybe 5, sort of lifting 5, sitting right up, lifting 5 down here, lifting 5 down here, and then taking myself back up and lifting 5 from this position. So always if I bring a knee in, I'm holding onto the front of my shin and I'm straightening out my back. And I think that's really, really important that you actually do that, that you're never rounded through your back and compromising through your spine. Always really, really important. And then stretching your foot out again. And one of the things I would do in between these exercises, just in case I had been putting extra pressure onto my spine, I would lift up, so grow tall in my spine, then I would tuck my chin to my chest and I would roll my body down. So I'm actually deliberately rounding through my spine here, keeping my chin tucked to my chest, resting my hands somewhere on my shins. And that's just a really nice back stretch. So those moves that we've been doing now through the hip flexors, now we're going to think about how do you stretch your hip flexors. So remember, if you sit a lot, your hip flexors are going to be really tight. As you can see, I can actually, well, I can feel mine tight. I'm used to feeling them. Actually, you can actually find your hip flexors. So if you lie down on your mat and you run your hand in through the inner groove of your pelvis, and you go in quite deep, you can actually feel the hip flexors. Well, you may not want to be feeling your hip flexors, but you do want to know where they are. And you also do want to be able to lengthen them, which is what we're going to do next. So we've been looking at strengthening them, making them strong. Now we want to look at how would you stretch your hip flexors? And again, that's a simple thing to do. When we were doing the last video on the quadriceps, we were looking at eliminating the hip flexors from our quadriceps stretches. Today, totally free to stretch away on our hip flexors. So to do this, I would come up onto my knees to start, and then I would take my left foot forward. So I've got a nice space between my legs here. I don't want them I don't want them one on top of the other. And then I'm going to inch that foot forward, and I'm going to come down. So I'm not right on the top of my knee, because I'm just above the knee joint. And then I'm just going to rest here. I'm just going to hang out here, let that hip flexor stretch, and I can feel it stretching away. So you can actually help yourself a bit with that by pushing your hand onto, remember, these are your glute muscles. You can push your hand onto your glutes, and you can really help with that. And I'm going to hold that for several seconds. And then I'm going to release it. And to release it, then I'm going to put my fingers to the mat, and I'm going to stretch my front leg back. So I'm combining this with a hamstring stretch. I'm going to take my hands down and I'm going to stretch out and hold my foot there. And there's a combined movement that we can do for this, which is, and I'll show you just from the front. So I have my left foot forward, and I'm just sinking down here into my hip flexor. Just really sinking down. And I can feel it giving all the time. So you may not be very far when you first do this, and gradually you can do more and more. So if you wanted to do the splits, say for instance, the front splits, this is an exercise you will be doing regularly just to get that length here to the hip flexors. Because most people who can't do the front splits, It's not hamstrings that are the problem, it's usually hip flexors that are the problem. Then you can take your fingers down to your mat. You can stretch that leg back. So that may be enough for you. That may be plenty, even with a little bend in your knee. But if you want to take it a little bit further, I would take my fingertips down and then I would stretch my foot back. So that's full hamstring stretch I've got going there. And then I'm going to lean back in to my hip flexor again. And then I'm going to come back out of it. And just to show you that there are all kinds of things you can do to combine these movements, and that's something I've been on to you about right from the very beginning, that it's really impossible to separate one part of your body from the other. So if I were to do a combined movement of hip flexors and hamstrings, then I would come into this position and I would lean in first into my hip flexors. I would take my hands up, so I'm bringing my shoulders into it, and then I would come back onto my hamstring. I would come up, I would come back onto my hamstring. So I'm getting just a slightly more dynamic movement going here. I'm back on my hamstring and up. And I would, of course, repeat that on both sides. And often when I'm taking a break in between the exercises that I'm doing, say the hip flexor one, and I want to just close off my hip flexors, I will sit back like this. And we've done this before with our feet, so just bringing your feet into this simple, relaxed position, I would then sit on my toes and spread my toes out. So even though I'm relaxing and I'm chilling out and I'm closing off my hip flexors, I am also just stretching through my feet. So every time that you're doing a little sequence like this, you want to think about, okay, I'm going to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes doing this, but I also want to not waste any of that time. I want to make maximum use of the time I'm going to spend looking after myself, right? What I would do then is try and fit as much as I possibly could into anything. So if I want to take a rest, if I think, oh, that's too hard, I don't feel like doing that, I would just do something else. And this is one of the things, in yoga we call this hero's pose. So I would sit on my toes first, and then I would just flip my feet back, and I would sit back on them. And look what you're doing as well. And this relates to our last video. I am stretching my quadriceps. So getting that stretch there. And also, unless you've got, sort of chronic things going on with your knees, this is also really good for your knees because we don't really take care of our knees like we should. And one of the most important things that we can do to take care of our knees is, of course, to work on our quadriceps. So that's a shorter video than usual, because normally I would put quads and hamstrings or quads and hip flexors together, but because I wanted to deliberately isolate them from each other, because they're two, although they work together, they're also two very independent sets of muscles with different functions. But they do combine to do some of the functions, but they also have specific things to do themselves. So again, just to go over what we did today, we looked at strengthening your hip flexors. We looked at, lifting your feet, your straight legs back and forward over the props there, whether it's blocks that I have or books or whatever. Then we looked at all of that sequence where I was raising and lowering my legs. And of course that combines not just the hip flexors, but you're also working on your quadriceps, you're working on your hamstrings, and I was using to work on my feet as well and my ankle mobility. So as we proceed through all of these and you learn more and more about the functions and the way of your body and the way the different parts work, we will gradually notice that no one set of things I do is isolated. It's connected to other things. So that's adding another part to the puzzle, or to that wonderful thing that our bodies are and how they function. This is very superficial now. It's not in depth in any way, but it's just a way of doing very, very simple things in a short space of time that will mean that your body stays mobile, flexible, and strong. And there's nothing really that prevents you from doing that. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of attention, And then just a little bit of commitment to doing it on a regular basis. So once off is not good enough. I'm sorry, it isn't. You just need to keep at this stuff and to look after and take care of what you've got, which is the magic of a fantastic physical body. And with that, I'll say goodbye for today. And we're going to follow on with, a problematic one for most people, our core. That's next. So again, see you and your cores for the next day.